Good evening, everyone. Welcome to ANC3F special meeting. I'm just going to call this meeting to order and just call on all of the commissioners, and I'll be spotlighting you as I see you. Commissioner James Tenderick.
Present.
Commissioner Courtney Carlson.
I'm here.
Commissioner Mitch Bayer.
I'm here.
Commissioner Terry. I'm trying to add you. I'm sorry. I'm doing all this stuff. Commissioner Terry Hewitt.
Present.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item of the agenda is adoption of tonight's agenda. Can I get a second to approve tonight's agenda?
I second it.
All in favor say aye.
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 And the motion passes. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is now the regular agenda, which is now a discussion, which is basically a community clarification and discussion on the proposed plan to replace UDC Van Ness Campus Building 41 with DC Archives. How we will do this is we will have representatives from UDC do their presentation, and then right after we'll have representatives from DC Archives do their presentation, and then we'll do Q&A. And when I do Q&A, I know there are folks here who are opposed and for this plan. So what I want to try to do is kind of alternate. You already know how you stand, but just if you can just once we get to that portion, just raise your hand using the icon at the bottom of the screen as the reactions to raise your hand. And each person will have, once we get to that portion, each person will have a minute to ask a question or comments, because we just want to make sure that we get multiple people, like just not one person is speaking. So right now I will start with General Counsel for UDC, Avis Russell, and the Chief Operating Officer, David Franklin. Avis.
Hi, good evening. Avis Russell, General Counsel for the University of the District of Columbia. I think Mr. Franklin is trying to join. He may have used a link that was sent via email. So I just...
Oh, he just joined. He's joining now.
Okay, great.
He's joining now. Did you need Mr. Franklin? I see you. Can you start your video so that I could add you to Spotlight?
He's on.
All right. And did you need to share your screen at all?
No.
All right. Thank you. And if you can start your presentation.
Happy to do that. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to give some background information regarding the UDC master plan. The 2020 to 2030 master plan process, after we engaged the consultants, involved creation of an internal advisory committee, which consisted of students who were students at UDC at the time, as well as members of the faculty and staff. We involved the community with community meetings. We involved the university community by conducting a survey. We had an internal survey for students, faculty, and staff, and we had an external survey for the community where we received input. We had several stakeholder meetings, and one of those meetings included students. I've heard some students say they weren't aware, but they may not have been students at UDC at the time that we engaged in this process. The options, which is the subject of this evening's meeting, were three. They were to the archives project, housing for students, and renovating building 41 for academic spaces. Those options were part of the master plan. They were approved by our board. They were approved by the zoning commission. UDC had the option to exercise any one of those three options. There was no requirement that we had to go back to the board, to the zoning commission in order to exercise the options. And we didn't, with regard to housing, we have wanted housing for UDC students since the 2010 master plan. However, as many of you know, our funds come from the district, and they have not given us money for housing. They also did not provide us money for renovation of building 41 for academic space. However, what they did do was gave us money to first lease 4250 and then to purchase 4250 for use as academic spaces. And they have provided funds for us to renovate 4250 so that it is, it serves the needs of the various deans and classes and students who will be educated in that building. There was an MOU that was entered into by the university and the district to explore whether that site was viable for the DC archives. My understanding is that the archives explored several places around the city and ultimately decided that the location of building 41 was a viable site for them to build the archives. And that decision was consistent with the MOU previously mentioned, as well as the master plan. The university then began having negotiations with the district pertaining to the use of that site and the obligations of the district as well as the university. And so the board and the district have reached an agreement on through an MOU for the use of that space, as well as seeking to amend the 2020 Van Ness Campus Master Plan in order to allow for the demolition of the building. The last thing I will say in terms of introductory remarks is that with regard to the concern about the gardens, to exercise any of those three options would have resulted in a disruption of the gardens, because that building would have become a construction site And so use of the gardens during construction, regardless of which use was chosen, would not have been viable. I am happy to answer any questions.
We will get to questions after your presentation. Well, after your presentation and DC Archives presentation. Is there any, so was that, okay, so that
I
was.
don't know if Mr. Franklin has something he wants to add to what has been presented at this time.
Not at this time, but I'm prepared to answer questions as the presentation moves forward.
Okay, so we will do that in the second half. Thank you very much. So what I'll do now is call on UDC Archives. Mr. Lopez Matthews.
How you doing? I'm here.
All right, give me a second.
Okay.
And I will let me remove spotlight for a second and just have Mr. Matthews.
Okay.
And then I'll bring everyone back for the second half for the Q&A. Welcome back, Mr. Lopez, Mr. Matthews. Thank you. Thank you.
I do want to share my screen so I can show the presentation. Just
Yes,
in case some folks missed what we shared earlier. So this is the latest design for the building, what we're proposing to build on the site of Building 41. As Ms. Russell mentioned, this project has been in place for a very long time. It started back in 2014 and stalled for a minute, but then we recently got funding to proceed with the project. And so it proceeded last summer. And so we have been moving forward with these designs last summer. So as most of you know, this is the current site of Building 41 in the UDC campus. This is what we are proposing to build in place of Building 41. As you can see to the left of the building, it leaves space for the future track and field that UDC plans to build. And so we are proposing to enter the existing parking garage for the DC Archives. And then there will be a service drive in the back of the building for secure transportation of archival records. This is the landscape layout of what we propose. So we're going to be adding a number of trees to this location. You also see a sunken lawn space. We do have proposed spaces for the UDC gardens. To the right of the drawing, you'll see the planters, and to the top, very top left of the drawing, you will see the planters that are proposed. This is the limit of our project on the campus. And so this is what we propose for the site to look like. This is a bird's eye view looking northwest, bird's eye view looking northeast from the back of the building. This is a view of the interior of the first floor of the building. So you'll enter, if you come from the garage, you'll enter the shuttle bay, or you'll enter the front door, go through security into the lobby area, which will have a permanent exhibit. Oh, sorry, I clicked that and my computer's slow. We also have a multi-purpose space on the first floor, which has the ability to seat 300, but can also be broken down into 3 separate meeting rooms. We have an exhibit gallery area, which will have exhibits that change periodically. There is a research room for the UDC Felix Grant Jazz Archives and the University Archives for the University of the District of Columbia. Then there is a larger research room for the DC Archives at the top. There is an AV and microfilm specific research room. And also on this level are restrooms. There is a digital archive storage room, which will be servers for the digital archives for the district, backup servers, and exhibit support room, records dock, service dock, secure receiving area. We will have classified records in this building. And so one of the things that I have made sure to point out to people as I presented is that this is a secure government facility with public functions. And so that does kind of guide some of the security necessary for the building. On the second floor, if you look to your left or my left, you'll see at the top, we have the cool storage for special media, film, the secure treasure vault. UDC has a processing room for their archives. They also have workstations for their archivists and students. They also have offices for their archivists there. There is an office space for the Institute for Public Policy and History. Then we have a digitization lab for OPR, electronic records processing room, wet processing, another project room, paper processing and paper storage, and then a quiet room that is shared for users of the building. And on the third floor, there is a staff lounge, which is also shared, and then office space for the Office of Public Records, paper storage. Then we have record center storage. One of the things that is unique about this building is that we will have our record center and archives share the same space. Most places have their record center off in a field somewhere where they can just build and build. But one of the goals of this project was to bring together the history of the district. Currently, DC's history is spread out among 18 different locations. And this building will bring all of DC's history back to the district so that it can be made available to the residents of the District of Columbia. And so on the fourth floor, we have space for district government agencies to work with those records that can't be open to the public at this time. So here are some more views of the proposed building. This is with the trees off. As you know, there are a number of mature trees on Van Ness, so you won't actually see this like this. You'll see it once my computer moves forward. You'll see it with a number of trees in front of the building. Yeah, so that's what it'll actually look like when you drive up the road, trees. So another view with the trees off, trees on. And so just here are some other views of the building as it will sit on the campus. I know I don't have that much time, so I'm not trying to drag this out, but here are some other views. We've had a number of meetings regarding this building from our side. As you can see on the list here, these are the number of meetings that we have had. It is also, if you want to look at any of the previous presentations, they're on our YouTube page. So if you do DC State Archives on YouTube, you can look at those presentations. In terms of our partnership, as Ms. Russell mentioned, we will house the Felix Grant Jazz Archives collection and the University Archives collection in the building. There'll also be processing space for those collections in the building and space for them to conduct research. We will, of course, provide space for students to do internships at the DC Archives, much like you see with archives that exist on university campuses around the country. We'll also provide opportunities for students to do research in terms of their classes, research on DC history in the building, as well as engage with faculty on the campus in terms of doing research. And this is something that is done at universities around the country. And so we look forward to supporting UDC and building its academic offerings. As far as the community, it opens up research into DC history. The current facility cannot hold many researchers. We can hold 3 researchers at the moment, but this facility will be a hub for research on DC history. It will also provide a secure, state-of-the-art place to preserve the history of the District of Columbia, its government, and its residents. And as a trained historian, as an archivist, I understand the importance of history, the importance of preserving history, and the importance of making that history available for everyone to see. And that is one of the things that excites me about building this new building, one of the things that brought me to this position from Howard University, and one of the things that I look forward to as we open this building, because one of the things that we were able to do at Howard was integrate the campus community into our archives and into our building. So that's what I look forward to seeing on the campus of UDC. In terms of what we're looking to with construction, we of course have sustainability goals. We are looking to build toward a LEED Gold status, although we are aware of upcoming changes to sustainability goals and the DC's plan for increasing sustainability. And so we are looking to kind of address those as we move forward with the project. In terms of the landscaping, we do plan to use native trees as much as possible, native plants as much as possible to fill that space that I showed you on the second slide. In terms of the deconstruction of the building and construction of the new building, there will of course need to be remediation made to building 41 before it can be taken down, because there is asbestos in the building. So that has to be remediated for the health of the students, for the health of the workers, for the health of everyone. So that will be remediated, then the building will be deconstructed. So it won't be, sometimes you see buildings be imploded. That's not going to happen here. The building will be taken down systematically because it is on an active campus. And so safety is a priority. And so the building will be deconstructed as opposed to using the word demolished. So it won't be blown up. It'll just be deconstructed. And then construction will begin after that. This is a document that we have that kind of shows the process that it will go through to begin the construction process. And this chart is available on the DGS website for the project. And so that is it for my presentation, and I will look forward to questions. Also, I wanted to just mention that our Secretary of the District of Columbia, Kimberly Bassett, is on the line. So I just wanted to acknowledge her there. She's waving at you. So.
Okay, welcome, Secretary Bassett. Okay, so what I will do, thank you, Dr. Matthews, for your presentation. I will now bring back the General Counsel, Avis Russell, and Chief Operating Officer David Franklin. Give me one moment as I try to add spotlight Mr. David Russell, and then we'll go to Q&A. Just give me a second. David Franklin. So let me start with commissioners, and then I'll go to the community. Commissioners, have you got any questions based on the presentations right now?
Madam Chair, the question I would have is, well, one, thank you so much to each and every one of you for your presentation and your informative presentation. The question I would have is in reference to the daycare center that's currently there. What is the plan for it? Will it be relocated during construction and then post-construction?
We have a MOU with the daycare center. The MOU was scheduled to terminate in December of 2023. And so it will be leaving the site by that time.
Thank you, ma'am. By any chance, if I can ask a follow-up, do you know where more so, not for me, I don't have little ones, but for the audience, I presume, what their intentions are? Will they relocate somewhere nearby, or there's no conversation of that sort?
They do not have to tell us where they're going. However, it is my understanding that they have selected a location that they are in the process of having prepared for the services they provide. But I do not know where that is.
Thank you. Thank you for your response. Much appreciated.
All right, now I'll go to the community. Each person will have a minute each for your questions, comment. So I'll start with Denisa, and then I'll go to Elizabeth, Brent, then Neil. So Denisa, Elizabeth, Brent, then Neil. Welcome, Denisa.
Hi, everyone. I'm a UDC student. I am also an urban sustainability major. Additionally, I am the manager of the UDC food pantry that benefits from the gardens, from the organic produce that the gardens provide to students as a fresh option for them. I have a question regarding the partnership between UDC and OPR. Is UDC a partner? Is UDC going to be a partner in the design of this project?
UDC's board was presented with the design concepts. They were presented to the board by the architects, as well as representatives from the Secretary's office and the archives. And the board approved the design concepts. And when I say we approved them, we provided input. Some changes were made to the design concept as a result of the input from the university. So the university was
How are those changes?
Excuse me?
I'm just concerned about the changes that were made, because the final decision, the final scheme that was decided, disregarded any UDC programming, and which in their co-location feasibility study that I have looked at, the UDC requested over 90,000 square feet of UDC programming space, which included the UDC TV studio, which currently is located in that building, to be saved or preserved or in some way added to this plan. Additionally, a childcare facility was also requested from UDC in this co-feasibility.
I
Co-feasibility.
do not know where you have got your information from.
Ms. Russell, I know where
that-
she got her
Go ahead,
information
someone else can
from.
answer as well, but
She-
I'm just
Denisa,
concerned
could I just answer
about.
your first question before you continue?
I'm sorry, Denisa. You've completed your question. Now we're in the portion where they answer your question, and then we have to move on to the next person
Okay.
that asks their
So can
question.
Matthew
Thank
please
you.
answer my-
But
So
I'll answer you. I'll type your answer in the chat.
No, please,
Oh, okay.
please,
I was just gonna say that that was one
recording.
of the options that was part of that co-location study, but that was not the option that was chosen. The option that was chosen was to go with option number 5, which only included OPR's program. But one of the things that we did do, because it was the idea of the mayor, the idea of the senior advisor, the idea of the office of the secretary, that they wanted to be sure that UDC was included and represented. And so we made space for the jazz archives, but we then also added the university archives so that the university archives themselves could also be stored in a state-of-the-art facility. We also gave a research room for UDC's archives so that they could have their own space to work in, maintain their own identity within this building. And so there was space open for them so that they could work and learn. And then students will come in to work with the UDC archives, jazz archives, and our archive. And so there are 3 opportunities to work with us.
So they did not meet the requests of the original UDC's requests for.
There were 5 options.
90s.
Oh, Denisa, I'm sorry, there were 5 options. Who decided? I'm sorry. I'm gonna go to Elizabeth next. Just real quick, who decided the final option?
That was actually part of the report at the end of the report. It was completed before I started, but it was mentioned in the report that the most fiscally responsible, the most feasible option, especially given the space available to us, was option number 5, because if we went with that option, we would then destroy the athletic fields, because the athletic fields couldn't stay if we were to go with that option, because we would have to destroy the athletic fields to build onto building 41 for them to have that space.
Okay, thank you. So then I'll go to Elizabeth, 1 minute, then Brent, then Neil for right now.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Elizabeth Clark Lewis. I'm a resident of the District of Columbia for over 50 years. I'm also a founder of the Afro-American Historic and Genealogical Society. I would like to again compliment Dr. Matthews on his presentation. He has presented the same information to the Afro-American Historic and Genealogical Association at local and national meetings, and we have been very anxious in support of this project. Genealogists, as you know, from all over the country come to the District of Columbia, to the National Archives, and many of them have anxiously awaited a facility where they could also do research for the District of Columbia. So this plan is applauded by family historians and genealogists from all over the country. I'd like to end by, since I only have a minute, end by saying that as a professor from Howard University, our archive students and our students in history have, to the degree possible, used the existing archive, and we are anxiously awaiting, and we applaud this program because it means an expansion of a research facility for not just students, community members, also faculty members like myself. Again, thank you very much, and I don't have a question. I just wanted to comment that this is a program and a project that is being anxiously awaited by members of the expanded community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Now I'll go to Brent.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brent Thigpen. I serve as the two-term University of District of Columbia student government president. And all this news that we talked about, this archives, is news to me. And I would like to see if I could talk to Mr. Franklin offline sometime soon, and Ms. Russell as well, so I can get a better aspect to see how this goes. And Mr. Franklin, I don't know if you're still on campus or not, but I would like to talk to you today if it's possible, because I live on student housing, and I would like to come talk to you and just chat briefly, if that's okay with you.
Is there a specific concern?
My concern is, it seems like it wasn't student friendly because of the fact of I saw the plan from DC Archives and see how it is with internships and stuff like that, and I understand that. But what the university needs right now is housing, and that's a big issue. And it seems like for this plan, you're taking the opportunity away from getting housing that is very needed, because we deal with students who are homeless and who do need housing for that. So that's how I stand on. That's my concern. And you, like you said, yes, it's the fifth option. But I would like to see if there's things that can be still reconsidered.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Can you speak to the student housing?
Sure. David Franklin, Chief Operating Officer. So I do appreciate the question. And to be frank, student housing remains a priority for the university. It is a high priority. It's not only students that are in need of housing in the district, but it really and truly, when you look at the opportunity to expand our enrollment or grow our enrollment, housing is going to be a tremendous piece of that, a tremendous component of that, and our ability to attract students, not only here in the DC area, but also internationally and across the US as a whole. So we have not deviated from our plans in terms of the need for housing. However, when you looked at the initial plan and funding, we simply did not have the funding in place to convert Building 41 into housing. And this was the best plan, the best option that we had at that particular time. As opposed to having a building sitting there unoccupied, we felt it was in our best interest to partner with the district and bring the DC archive to the university. It was a partnership agreement. But the housing component, we're still looking at housing. We're looking at master lease agreements across the district as a whole. We've looked at building 46 West, which is also known as the Performing Arts Building, as a possible site for housing. We looked at building 44. We looked at the acquisition of possibly the Days Inn. We recently toured the Interset building. So there's a lot of conversations going on with respects to housing, but all ties to funding. And without that funding, it's just very difficult to bring housing to the university. So we're exploring P3s, private partnership agreements. So we're looking at various options. We have, again, want to make that very clear to the students in the community. We have not deviated from that plan, but until we have lined up the funding, that is simply not a reality until the dollars are in place.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. As promised, Neil, Amanda, then Corey, then Sarah. You have 1 minute, Neil.
Thank you for letting me talk, and thank you to Dr. Matthews for a great presentation, and Ms. Russell. My name is Neil Funny, and I'm a member of the DC Archives Advocates, and I actually grew up in 3F on Brandywine Street, and I'm an architect and historian. And I am an architect and historian because the universities I went to had, both my undergraduate and graduate universities had archival archives on campus and had archival teaching programs that allowed me to understand how to do this work. When we talk about the history of DC, that is a history that has been misunderstood and wrongly understood, and that has affected, and that those misunderstandings and the decisions made that are hidden by those misunderstandings have affected the lives of both myself and all students and all residents of the district. Having this, giving control of the history to the students of UDC and giving it to the faculty of UDC, this program is an extraordinary opportunity that will allow them to do a lot of things. I also will just last say that a lot of the interpretations about adapting Building 41 are egregiously wrong. They are not made by people who are architects. They're not made by people with professional licensure. It is a very difficult building to rehab. Any rehabilitation would destroy the gardens because the construction crews require clear areas around them, both for safe access to the facade and then also to deal with dust and abatement and during abatement, and then also to store stuff. So
sorry, Neil, your time is up.
you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, your time is up, Neil.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Moving on, and that was a comment. The next person is Amanda. Dr. Huran.
Yes, you came and visited my class.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. That was great. Nice to see you again. I'm an associate professor at UDC. I'm entering my 12th year of teaching there. I'm in strong support of bringing the DC archives to our campus precisely because of the benefits I think it will bring our students. One of the classes that I teach at UDC is DC history. And when I teach this class, I take my students to archives all over town, DC History Center, MLK Library. We go to the special collections at George Washington University to have firsthand experiences doing archival research related to the city's history. And these hands-on archival visits are incredibly powerful experiences for our students. But organizing field trips can be tough. Our students have very busy lives and complicated schedules. So the idea of having the DC archives on our campus is so exciting to me. That students can just do that work directly on campus. And I'm also really thrilled at the opportunity of students potentially getting internships at the archives and really building our DC history work on campus and the ways that the archives, I think, could really support that. I also want to note that I worked full-time inside Building 41 for 7 years, and I can attest that it was not a good building for working or learning in. So I'm delighted about the plan to replace this building with the new, just gorgeous building that Dr. Matthews has shown us this evening. I'm also a huge fan of the UDC gardens. They're beautiful, and I understand it's hard to lose them temporarily. And I personally am really going to miss them, but there are other gardens in other locations on campus, and the plan does include new plantings and new gardens. And I think we can have both the archives on campus in this beautiful new building and ultimately have the gardens as well. Thank you. And I really do appreciate everyone's time and the effort that's going into this project.
Thank you, Dr. Huran, which was a comment. So we'll go to the The next participant, Corey.
Thank you so much. I'm going to try and squeeze in a comment and a question here. First, full support for the archive. I think it's a wonderful resource and has a place on the campus. And I don't think that any of the students tonight are opposed generally to that sort of idea. It sounds like the largest question here is whether or not the community was involved in any meaningful way. You know, I'm a researcher, I'm a UDC alum. My mother went to university, my grandmother went to the university. We all studied in Building 41. I have a deep passion for the history of the district. I am excited as an alum to be able to come back and use the archive. My biggest concern, as I've outlined in quite the essay in the chat, is it seems like the students and maybe some of the alum don't feel like they've been included in the process, whether it relates to the planning or sort of the process leading up to this meeting tonight. And I don't want to diminish the efforts undertaken by Dr. Matthews, Chief Counsel Russell. However, I think that, you know, in a situation like this where we're sort of faced with the sentiment that's present tonight, I think that some further engagement is warranted. And so I guess my only question would be, you know, to the degree that you can in possibly a minute, can you outline what that engagement has looked like for me? You know, I'd like to understand a bit more what that's looked like, and then, you know, going forward, what that might look like if you all decide to re-engage with the campus community about what exactly can be included in the site going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. So that was the question, if any one of you can, or all of you can answer. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw, was it Corey Shaw? Yes. Did you hear the beginning of my presentation when I talked about the engagement during the master plan process?
I heard a bit of it, but somebody came to the door.
Oh, okay. So just briefly to recap, we did have students on the internal advisory committee. We had a survey that was launched for the UDC community, and we had a session just for students where we talked about the master plan. Now, I recognize that, you know, the student population is transitory and that it is conceivable that there were students who participated in that process in 2020 who are no longer students at the university, and that there are new students at the university who weren't around when this process took place. But I assure you that we did receive input from students as well as the community. We did an external survey as for members of the community, as well as an internal survey. And this matter was discussed by the board at the board meeting. And that, I hope that answers your question in terms of the things we did to reach out to students and the community.
So on the archive side, we actually started engaging with the public back in 2014, because this project has actually been a 20-year-long project, because the DC Archives has needed a new building since 1994, because it was at capacity in 1994, because the DC Archives is a state archive, and it has the amount of records of a state archive, but it doesn't have that size. And so it started in 2014 with public engagement meetings. We did meet with students, we did meet with faculty. And I say we, I was not employed here, so I wasn't here for that. But when the project stalled and then restarted in 2022, when I did come on board, we presented the updated project to the public in September, which UDC was invited to. That was made known to the UDC community. They were invited. Once we moved forward, we had another meeting in February, which the public was also invited to. We had another public engagement meeting in April, which the public was invited to, and we made sure that UDC was able to share that with their community so we could share to you what was happening with the project. And so we haven't made it a secret what we are doing. We have put it out there through our channels to promote it, to make it known that we're discussing this project. The meetings were all held online so that they were accessible to people all over. the country because we wanted to make sure that they were accessible to everyone. Because as you know, COVID is still around. Some people are afraid to come out group in large congregations. And so we made that open to the public. And then we made the recordings available on our YouTube channel if you weren't available to see that, which they are still available. If you go to the DC State Archives YouTube channel, you can see those presentations. And we continue to have public engagement, and we'll continue to share updates on the project as we move forward with everyone, because we do want to keep people involved. We do want to keep people engaged so that you know what's coming and what's happening, because the goal here is to preserve and share the history of the District of Columbia and to combine that with the educational offerings of the University of the District of Columbia, because we believe that that is an institution worth supporting. That's why we're there. Because, you know, you can build an archive anywhere. Before I started this job, I heard they were building the DC archives in Maryland because of the space that would be needed for the records. And so I was very excited to learn that a location was found in the district at UDC to sort of make a central hub of learning on the campus and in DC. Because, you know, so much is going out to Maryland and Virginia, but the fact that it's here in DC is extremely exciting to me and at this location. So we do plan on continuing to share what's happening, getting public feedback. We do have it on our website that you can share some feedback, particularly about the design right now. And you can email me. I'm not hiding anywhere.
How is that information being disseminated?
So we shared it through our city channels. We shared it on our Twitter page. I shared it with the UDC leadership team. They shared it through their email list services, which is my understanding, and shared it on campus. So that's my understanding.
Okay. I will go to, so Denisa, I'm gonna have to have you last because you've spoken already. But so I'll have Sarah, Kendra, Amy, Autry, then Denisa. Sarah.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. First, let me give a background on myself. I am about a decade-long resident and a volunteer at the UDC Gardens. I actually have 3 questions, so I hope that's okay. The first question I had is, how much is the construction budgeted at this point in time? On the DGS website, it says 72 million. On the National Planning Commission presentation that was given in July, it says 104 million. So I want a clarification on that. I know it was mentioned that there is asbestos containing materials at the building. I looked through the concept plan and it lists an ESA or an environmental site assessment, and it wasn't actually included in the document that was published. And the third question I have is, in the MOU that was signed in 2018, it discussed the need to incorporate any concerns into the master planning process, which happened in 2020. Why wasn't that addressed, and why wasn't the plan to demolish the building included in the master plan that was originally produced? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the first question is, the budget is 104 million. There was a supplement added to the budget in July, which is why the number rose in July. And you asked several other questions that kind of floated by me. I might need you to go back and we can see which one of us can answer that question.
Okay, sorry. The second question I had, it was mentioned that there is asbestos in the building.
Yeah.
There was a concept plan posted or I don't know when it was posted, but it's on the DGS webpage that includes, it says there is an appendix item with the environmental site assessment, which is the assessment that you use to determine if there's hazardous materials in a building, but it was not included in the published document. Will that be made publicly available?
That is a DGS question, and I will find that out.
Okay.
Well, I can't answer that right now, and I don't want to lie to you. So,
Okay.
but I will find it out.
And then the third question I had, I'm sorry, I speak very fast. I'm from New York. And is in the MOU that was originally signed between the university and the district. It states that as part of the process, that considerations during the master planning process, concerns would be included. That MOU was signed in 2018. The master planning process happened in 2020, and yet the final master plan did not include what you had proposed in 2018. I just want to understand where the discrepancy lies. Why is it that the final document doesn't reflect what was said was going to happen in 2018?
So Avis Russell, General Counsel, UDC, if I understand your question correctly, the 2020 master plan identified the archives as a use for that site. However, it was not until after the architects who were hired for the project did an assessment of that site that it was determined that that building could not support the archives for several reasons. One of them being that, as I understand it, due to the collections and the weight of the collections, that the building would not support the collections. That is one reason that I understand it was decided to demolish it, as well as the fact that attempting to renovate it would have been more costly than replacing it.
And can I just say one thing? I thought that in 2018, the decision.
I'm sorry, Sarah. We've got to let everyone else get their question in. I'm sorry. The next person is, who is it? Kendra, then Amy Autry. Kendra.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kendra Williams. I'm a student here at UDC, and today I have a question surrounding student life when it comes to the archives. So, as somebody who is trying to increase student engagement here on campus and bring back sort of that HBCU culture here, I'm just a little concerned on how this will clash with what we are trying to do as students as well. Like, as we're on campus and just the playing of music, or just a lot of people on campus as well, and also people who are visiting this archive building, will that clash with the sorry, I'm trying to gather the right wording. Will that clash with what we are trying to do as student engagement, like our what we are trying to bring back to the campus?
So to answer your question, yes, I come from Howard University, which is one of the greatest HBCUs in the world. And we have a world-class archive on our campus that is a part of the campus community. Students come, they visit every day, they do research there, they do projects there, they do internships there. I have personally created 3 librarians by converting business students into librarians, by having them do internships with me and showing them the power of working in libraries and the power of working in archives. There are ways to move around campus events. As you know, Howard Homecoming is a major event every year. The archives plans its schedule around the Howard Homecoming, around major events that happen on Howard's campus. And so it can be done. Will just be a part of the university's life, because we'll be there sharing space, and will be a space that is available for students. I mean, actually, to be honest with you, this is available for everyone in the District of Columbia, and UDC students are a part of the District of Columbia. And I see it as a positive for students that they have a place to learn, and a place to do research, and a place to learn skills. I know that history is under attack in a lot of places in this country, but DC isn't one of those spaces. DC is a place where our mayor supports history. That's why I came on board, because of the dedication of the mayor and the secretary and these people to support the history of the District of Columbia, to support development at UDC and to support building institutions that support the entirety of the District of Columbia. And so I will say, I understand that, you know, you're trying to build student life on UDC's campus as an HBCU. I don't see why the archives can't be integrated into that. I mean, the leadership of the District of Columbia when it started at Home Rule were Black Power leaders. They came straight from the Civil Rights Movement, straight from the Black Power movement to build the District of Columbia. And so you go through the records that we have in our facility and you learn all about that. You learn about the freedom marches of the 70s. Now, it was a government agency that was doing the watching, but we have the records of those agencies that were watching the people doing the protests, doing the marches of the 70s and 80s in DC, and you can learn about that, and students can come do research projects about that and learn about the history of the District of Columbia, as well as the history of the University of the District of Columbia, because the University Archives is going to be in the building.
I'm sorry, Kendra, I would add that in terms of student life, when we were negotiating the MOU with the archives, we had discussions about student life. We informed the archives that Denard Plaza is a gathering place on the Van Ness campus, and that you know, the operations of the archives would not interfere with the ability of us using the plaza, the breezeway. In terms of traffic, yes, people can access the archives through the campus, but they also can access the campus, the archives from Van Ness without walking through the campus. But I assure you that the representatives on the team that negotiated the MOU was very cognizant about the importance of the archives being a partner and an asset to the university and campus life, and that it would not be a deterrent.
Thank you for your question, Kendra. Thank you for the responses. We will go to Amy Autry, then Denisa. 1 minute for your question or comment, Amy.
My question is about what during the construction is going to be done to preserve the UDC garden, because I live at the Connecticut House. I have personally taken families who don't have access to fresh produce or to the garden on Saturday mornings. It also, the produce goes to the food pantry across the street on Connecticut Avenue. My daughter went through K through 12 in DC. I myself went to Phoebe Hearst. So I must admit, since I retired, I have not seen any outreach to the community for engagement. Maybe I lost it, but I'm pretty involved in the community these days. So I'd like to know what is going to be done during the construction to preserve the garden and the produce and the opportunity for the community families to partake in it. And I also really like to hear a little bit more about when there was outreach in the last couple of years for community engagement, because it certainly has passed me by, and I'm pretty active in the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any response?
So it's my understanding that the gardens will be relocated during the construction. It's also not taking away the entire garden on the campus. It's only taking away those gardens that are in the immediate vicinity of the building. The rest of the gardens will still be there and still be available to people. Only these gardens that are immediately near the construction site, which have to be preserved, will be moved and relocated. And so they'll be relocated. UDC is exploring options to relocate the gardens, and they are going to communicate that with the garden club. So I can answer that. I'm sorry to answer for UDC, but
no, it's okay. Also, the so as I said earlier, if we had exercised any of the options, the gardens adjacent to Building 41 would have been disrupted during construction. And I don't know if you were here earlier when Mr. Matthews showed the design and what the site would look like after that. So gardens will be restored after construction is completed, and we are looking at other sites on campus that can be used for that purpose in the meantime. With regard to outreach, I said earlier that in connection with the 2020 master plan, we had community meetings. We had information on our website. We had a survey that was distributed on our website, and I think in at least one of the community publications to apprise people of the survey that they could participate in, as well as presentations to the ANC during that time. But again, this was the 2020 master plan, and that outreach occurred in primarily in 2021, in the early part of 2021.
Thank you. Autry.
I'm a UDC student. And I was just wondering, like, is this conversation more of a like, hey, this is what's happening, and we'll clarify what we're doing? Or is this like a, hey, there could be changes? Or is everything like locked in right now?
So I will tell you what the university has done. The university had a master plan that was approved with 3 options, one of them being the archives. The university has, once the site was selected, the university approved the design plans. This was done by the university's Board of Trustees. The university's Boards of Trustees has submitted an amendment to the Van Ness Master Plan to allow for the demolition of Building 41, which will be considered by the Zoning Commission later this month. And the university has entered into a use and development agreement that sets forth the obligations of the university and the District of Columbia in the event the archives building is approved by the Zoning Commission. So that is where we are.
Denisa, Corey, then Terry, then everyone will give a final statement. I'm sorry,
I'll
Dr.
just answer Sarah's question about the survey about the environment.
Yes.
It's in the concept design. It's Appendix 3. I found it. I got the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Denisa, Corey, Commissioner Hewitt, then final comments.
All right. Hello, everyone. Again, I just want to clarify again. I'm very concerned about specifically the demolition and amendment of the 2020 campus plan and how students were engaged specifically with that, with the demolition decision specifically. I'm also concerned because in the reports of the design concept and also the DC Archives concept design submission, this is going to be a 3.5 year demolition and construction project. Like Matthews said earlier before, the reason that we didn't consider the other schemes was because it would be encroaching on the UDC fields and athletic fields. I'm concerned because while this scheme and this design does not encroach specifically on, land is not taken from the athletic fields, it is located directly next to the athletic fields, and I am concerned about not only students' health, but also how this will affect our student athletes. And if there is a, I know that you said there was a deconstruction plan. I would like to have public access to the deconstruction plan. And in the submission, there was a hazardous materials report that was supposed to be in the appendix, along with a survey, student survey, or civil survey, excuse me, in the appendix. Neither of those are included in the submission. So I'm confused on where that information was lost, of where the civil survey is and how this hazardous materials report for the final design that was submitted in December 2020.
So apparently it's appendix number 4.
And yeah, and so the appendix is not actually attached to that. If you want to go through the whole thing and actually locate for me, that would be great. But there's no attachment of the hazardous materials report. It says there is an appendix, but there's no it's not attached. It says it should be, but
I'll make sure it's updated if it's not attached.
Along with the civil survey.
Along
with the civil survey.
It'll all be included. What was your first question?
My question was how will this impact students' health, specifically student athletes. The athletic field is located directly adjacent to this project. It's a 3.5-year project. I'm really concerned about that.
Many building projects have happened throughout the city and throughout the country that have dealt with this material, and it's been done safely. You just have to take precautions to ensure the safety of the community around it. This project will have all of those precautions put in place before construction begins. And I'm sorry, the chat is popping up in my face. But
so where's that plan for to
the plan is not done yet because we have not hired a construction consultant, but that is what will happen. And so once that plan is done, it will be made available to the public on the DGS website, but I can't make something available to you that doesn't exist. We are in the very early stages of this process, and we're moving through this process, which is why, and as things become available, we make those things available to the public.
So will students have a say on
those will be made available to the public when they are completed, because we are operating in full transparency.
Thank you, Denisa. Corey, Terry, and then final statements from the presenters.
Yeah, again, going to try and walk this line of commenting and asking a question. I think I did it pretty decently last go around. I'm gonna try it again. I will say, as a student, I remember sitting next to mothers, fathers, twins, 2-3 kids in the classroom, and watching them struggle with trying to balance the life of a parent and a student. It's something that it's difficult, I imagine, as a parent to be struggling in that sense. And I think that one of the biggest obstacles, even with the childcare facility that's there, is sort of access and capacity for UDC students to have their children in that facility. I'd like to know a little bit, given that we're still pretty early on in the process, it sounds like going before the zoning commission pretty soon. Is there space for amendments to the land use plan for the building to maybe try and include some sort of childcare facility on site? And maybe this is a question, I think, for Mr. Franklin, whether or not this is a sort of larger effort that can include the UDC community to try and get that sort of facility on campus in tandem with this new development. Again, I think the archive is great. I think there's some things that maybe could be addressed either in this process or adjacent to it.
So I appreciate the question. I think at the end of the day, the university is currently leasing what we call our commercial spaces on Connecticut Avenue. And we have some space available at this point in time. And if there's a potential tenant that is interested in leasing the space for a daycare center, we will entertain that, as we entertain all options that come our way with respects to getting our commercial spaces leased. So if there's a potential tenant out there that's interested in leasing our space and touring our space, that would could be used for a daycare center, by all means, we're happy to take those calls, set up a tour of the space and see if we can reach an agreement on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry Hewitt, and then we'll have final statements from everyone because we're at time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to all those who have attended or are in attendance, and especially thank you to the presenters and the questioners and the commenters. You know, UDC, I've said this before in past meetings, I suspect it's dear to many of us, and we're here either for or against something, but we're here for or about UDC. And UDC is central. I hope that those individuals who are on the line, who are questioning, providing their say, have actually and will do participate and be a part of UDC. Embrace and uplift UDC, not just by commenting, but taking advantage of if the gerontology program, if you qualify to take a class at UDC or to enroll as a student, show your support, UDC. But what I would say about this archival program, I was a student, so Corey, thank you for that. I was a student raising a child. My son was older and did not qualify for daycare because he was in high school. But there are students who are out there and have that need. That's not the point of what I'm trying to say. But as a student and as a parent whose son went to UDC, this archival plan is phenomenal. It opens the opportunity for master's programs in library science. And if you're familiar with the library science programs, in the area, there are only two, University of Maryland and Catholic. And UDC needs to have a footprint, a firm footprint in that program, which allows internships, it allows student growth, it allows the ability for those such as what the example of business students being able to transform into historians or archivists. There's so many options out there. So as much as you might be for or against the concept of a building staying or coming, it is about growing the student body. And more importantly, those students who are here now, phenomenal. Thank you for your potential future public service, for laying the groundwork for it. Just don't forget that it started at UDC. And also remember, this program, it will take 3.5 years. Just as those people who were 3 or 4 years ago were either saying yes or no to a program, you will be part of the next program, this program and future programs. But this is about growth. This is about opportunity. There's so many programs that can come out of this, whether it's information science that's connected to the historian or knowledge management or some other programming or coding component. But there's so many bachelors of science degrees I can see. There's so many masters of science programs as well. And it is phenomenal. It's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hewitt. I saw Commissioner Courtney Ham was briefly raised. I just want to make sure I acknowledge you. And then I'll get to the presenters for their last comments, their last statements.
Thanks. I just wanted to quickly say and echo a bit of what Terry said, in that I think that what the students are saying who, you know, weren't in the process, don't feel like they were in the process, has a lot of validity in terms of what you want for your school, and that you care about the neighborhood and the school. We care about the neighborhood and the school. I think we're maybe conflating two different issues here. You need a daycare. We want you to have a daycare. You need housing. We want you to have housing. I think this is separate from this issue of the archives. And I would say that as I've collected information as a commissioner, that's one thing I feel that's coming, rising to the top for me, which is these things can both be true, right? This archive can be a wonderful addition to the UDC campus, and the UDC campus needs housing, and the UDC campus needs other things that aren't happening right now. And I want to say that we support, or I personally would say that, you know, it's possible to support both things, and I understand a lot of the concerns, and I really appreciate hearing so much engagement in this neighborhood. I'm a DC native. I care a lot about the history of DC. So I just wanted to thank everybody for being engaged in this, and we're listening to you. I'm listening to you. I know my fellow commissioners are listening to you, and we really care about UDC and the archives. And I hope you'll see that all of us are coming to this with the energy of loving this neighborhood, loving the city, and really caring about UDC. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I also want to add, I want to say thank you so much to Dr. Matthews, Avis Russell, David Franklin, because, you know, they're here. We're here to make sure that the community is heard. We can't give you a full day. I'm sorry, we're not able to give several hours, but we're giving you the opportunity. So don't feel like because you don't have 2 hours in one sitting that we're not paying attention. This meeting is happening because we got so many responses from people who are for the archives and those who are not for the archives. But I got the feeling that there's a huge misunderstanding. And so this is the opportunity you were given the opportunity to have those discussions. And it was not just tonight, but we also discussed this during our public meeting in July as well. So thank you for that. Dr. Matthews, your closing statement, then I'll go to, actually I'll start with Ms. Avis Russell for your closing statement, then Dr. Matthews, and then Mr. David Franklin.
First, I want to thank you for calling this meeting, as well as the participation of the other commissioners in ANC3. I also want to thank those who listened and didn't have questions, as well as those who had questions. I hope that whether you agree with the responses that you received this evening, we have tried to be as transparent as possible with regard to the process and the actions taken. Brent Thigpen asked to speak with me. I'm available for a conversation at your convenience, Brent, to answer your questions and to talk about what may have happened before you were a student at UDC, as well as the other students that participated this evening, or your cohorts on campus. We think that this is a good alternative to having an empty building on campus where we had no funds to renovate a building. And I think the most important thing to recognize is that either of the three options, as I said before, would have resulted in a disruption of the gardens during renovation or construction. So for those of you who advocate for the university making another choice, as to the gardens, the same effect would have occurred. I know that campus housing is crucial to the university's future. And as Mr. Franklin said, we have and continue to explore various options for that, and ask the council to provide funds so that we can provide more housing for students and housing on campus. And the last thing I want to clarify is the daycare center that is currently on campus It's my understanding that it is really not serving the campus community. I, in fact, asked a colleague who had a toddler about using that center, and she said that it was out of reach financially for her. So I do not think that, regardless of what the intent was, that the daycare center has been a resource for students or faculty, even though the MOU with them provided for spaces for students and faculty. And I want to also say that the university's Board of Trustees has discussed daycare centers for childcare centers for our students, and that discussion has been, includes, whether or not we can afford to give stipends to students, because some students have said that they prefer for their children to be cared for in the communities that they live in, not where they go to school. So I just want to, there are a lot of things on UDC's to-do list, and it's important that we all work together to try to take things off of that list for the benefit of our students and the greater DC community. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews.
I just want to.
You froze. We'll come back to you, Mr. David Franklin. Final statements.
Yes. Good evening again. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to the ANC commissioners. I want to say thank you to the students, UDC students, staff, faculty, stakeholders for participating in tonight's meeting. I want to share that my number one priority remains that of our students, the UDC students. And as the GC Russell has stated, the number one priority for me is housing, bringing housing to the university, and student residential housing, that is. And we believe that if we're able to bring that housing to the university, is really going to expand the footprint in terms of our enrollment. So that remains a priority. I think with respects to the archives, it's a great partnership. GC Russell stated it. We had a vacant building that was going to remain vacant. When you look at the cost of the renovations, to bring housing there was approximately, when we did the estimate, was around $133 million. And we simply did not have the support at that point in time. I think we're making headway in that area. And I look forward, again, number one goal is to bring housing. We understand what it means to our students. We understand what it means to the faculty. We also understand what it means to the neighborhood. The more students you have on our campus is better for the residents in terms of the economy. And we're focused on that. We have not deviated from that. And we're committed to that. So again, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity tonight, and look forward to continue to work with the community, our students, the faculty, and of course, our staff. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Matthews, good to see you again.
And sorry about that. My
No
power
problem.
flickered in my place.
No problem.
So, sorry, but I am back. I just want to thank you all at the ANC for allowing us this space to sort of provide clarity on this project and how it has proceeded throughout the 20 years that it has been in development. I want to, just on behalf of the mayor's office, thank everyone for sharing their thoughts and their opinions. We are making the reports available to the public. We will continuously provide updates as we progress with the project. And so, I'm just excited to be a part of a project to build a state-of-the-art facility for the District of Columbia, because I feel like DC deserves to have this facility, and I believe that it should be on the campus of the University of the District of Columbia to really make it into a center of research and study in the city. And I understand that there are concerns about other things that students need, like housing and other things, but both can be true and both can be provided for. You know, this building, the demolition of this building, the construction of the DC archives doesn't negate anything else that needs to happen at UDC. This is just a benefit to the University of the District of Columbia. That's how I see it. That's how, you know, us in the Office of the Secretary see it. I know Secretary Bassett is here. I'm not sure if she wants to say anything, but, you know, that's the way we see it. And we really just want to support the history of the District of Columbia. You know, this isn't just a building for UDC. It's a building for the entire District of Columbia and indeed the entire nation, because the history of DC is US history. And so I think that we are bringing something positive to the neighborhood, positive to the community, positive to the campus. And I am excited for the work that we're doing. And so thank you all for being here and listening to us.
Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you everyone who participated tonight. And you do have our participants, you have everyone's contact. So please continue the discussion with UDC and DC Archives. With that said, commissioners, can I get a motion to end the meeting?
I motion to end this ANC3F special meeting.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And with that, thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for